What if I told you the US once tried to build a tank so big, its turret made up nearly 3/4 of the vehicle's length? Armed with a massive 155mm gun and an experimental autoloader, the T58 was America's boldest and perhaps most bizarre attempt at Cold War heavy armor. Today, we're diving into the story of a tank that was too big, too complex, and too ambitious for its time. The T58 Heavy Tank. We'll explore its origin, what it was built to do, and how it might function if it ever rolled into your favorite war game. When the Soviet Union unveiled the IS-3 at the Berlin Victory Parade in 1945, it caught Western analysts completely off guard. Its sharply angled frontal armor and low silhouette signaled a shift in armored warfare, one that existing American heavy tanks were not prepared to counter. In response, the US began developing a wave of experimental heavy tanks. Vehicles like the T-29, T-30, and T-34 explored larger guns and better armor, but all came with limitations. The T-29 carried a 105mm cannon. The T-30 used a 155mm. The T-34 introduced a 120mm high-velocity gun, adapted from anti-aircraft use. Still, none of them could reliably defeat the IS-3 from the front at long range. In December 1950, the Army Development Guide formally prioritized the development of heavy tanks capable of countering Soviet armor like the IS-3. This led to multiple new proposals, culminating in designs such as the T-43, which would become the M103, and the T-57, which stood out for its oscillating turret and auto-loading 120mm gun. Yet, the need for raw firepower remained. In October 1951, during the Tripartite Conference of Armor and Bridging, it was recommended that a new tank be developed around a 155mm gun, offering greater destructive potential than either the T-43 or the T-57. That decision gave rise to the T-58 Heavy Tank. Based on the same T-43E1 chassis as the M103, the T-58 retained the proven automotive systems, but introduced a new turret, new gun, and a radically different internal configuration. At the center of the design was the 155mm T-180 smoothbore, a heavily modified successor to the T-30's T-7. Initially designated T-7E2, the T-180 featured a vertical sliding breech, a bore evacuator near the muzzle, a thickened gun tube, and an extended chamber adapted for cartridge cases sealed with plastic plugs. The gun was mounted in the T-170 hydro-spring recoil system, using 4 cylinders, 2 per side, to absorb recoil in a compact path. To avoid overextending the turret, recoil travel was deliberately limited to just 12 to 14 inches. The turret itself was oscillating, similar to the one used on the T-57, but with a more refined internal layout and a suspended main gun. Ammunition was stored as separate loading rounds and fed into the breech via a 6-round autoloader, dramatically improving sustained fire rate while reducing crew workload. 2 turrets were ordered in 1952 from United Shoe Machinery Corp., and at least 1 full vehicle was completed using a modified T-43 hull. Evidence of this comes from rare photos released by Harold Biondo on Reddit, who shared what are currently the only known images of a completed T-58 heavy tank. His efforts in collecting, scanning, and preserving these materials, along with his Patreon-supported archive, provided the community with a vital glimpse into a vehicle once thought lost to history. Despite these advancements, the T-58 project was ultimately short-lived. Changes in doctrine, post-Korean War drawdowns, and the transition to more versatile main battle tanks sealed its fate. By early 1957, the program was canceled, and both prototype turrets were scrapped. The T-58 was a 66-ton American heavy tank experiment, built on the M103 chassis, but with a turret so large it covered nearly 3/4 of the vehicle's length. It had a crew of 5, commander, gunner, driver, and 2 loaders, and they needed every one of them, because at the heart of this machine was the 155mm T-180 smoothbore gun, a direct evolution of the T-30's T-7, now redesigned with a vertical breech, bore evacuator, and a compact recoil system. The gun fired separate loading ammunition from a 6-round autoloader, capable of delivering up to 23 rounds per minute in short bursts, far faster than any other U.S. heavy tank. In total, it carried 32 rounds. There were 2 primary shells. The T-267 Heat, weighing 48 kilograms, could punch through 406 millimeters of armor at 0 degrees, 353 millimeters at 30 degrees, and 203 millimeters at 60 degrees, regardless of distance, with a muzzle velocity of 826 meters per second. and the HEP, at 61 kilograms, could blast through 178 millimeters at any angle or range, with a muzzle velocity of 717 meters per second. The gun sat inside a massive oscillating turret. Traverse was fully powered at 18 degrees per second, with an elevation range of +12 to -8 degrees. Secondary weapons included a 30 cal coaxial MG with 6,500 rounds and a 50 cal M2HB on top with 1,200 rounds. The armor layout was conventional for its time, sturdy up front but thinner everywhere else. The turret face had 127 millimeters of cast armor angled at 60 degrees, with sides between 70 and 83 millimeters and 50.8 millimeters at the rear, all sloped between 20 and 40 degrees. The hull followed the same pattern. The upper glacis had 127 millimeters at 60 degrees, while the lower glacis offered 102 millimeters at 50 degrees. Side armor ranged from 44 to 50.8 millimeters, and the rear hull dropped to 38 millimeters on the upper plate and just 25.4 millimeters on the lower, both sharply angled to compensate for thickness. The tank also featured the T50E1 stereoscopic rangefinder, standard for American heavies of the time, helping with long-range precision before the age of laser sights. And for mobility, the T58 was powered by a Continental AV 17907 engine, producing 810 gross horsepower, though only 650 HP reached the drive sprockets. That gave it a net power-to-weight ratio of 9.8 horsepower per ton and a top speed of 35.4 kilometers per hour, just enough to keep up with the rest of the formation on open roads. In short, the T58 was a heavyweight, auto-loading beast with firepower that outclassed anything in the American arsenal, but packed into a turret too tall, too heavy, and just a little too late for the battlefield. With all its specs on the table, the T58 would certainly land in the upper tier of Cold War heavy tanks, at least at first glance. Its powerful heat and HEP rounds, combined with a rapid-fire autoloading system, suggest a vehicle with massive burst potential. But its gameplay would be a double-edged sword. That burst potential, 6 shots in under 20 seconds, is incredible. But after that, a long, vulnerable reload. Considering it has the same mobility and armor profile as the M103, it wouldn't survive aggressive pushes or prolonged fights. It's all about that first strike. Performance-wise, it sits between the AMX-50s at 7.7 and the T54E1 at 8.0. It has the firepower of an 8.3, but the mobility and survivability of a 7.3. Realistically, the T58 would likely settle at a battle rating between 7.7 and 8.3, depending on how aggressively Gaijin interprets its burst potential. In the end, the T58 wasn't just another prototype. It was the final echo of a dying doctrine. A tank designed to win in theory, but never given the chance to prove itself in battle. A smoothbore monster with devastating firepower, packed into a turret too tall, too heavy, and too ambitious for the battlefield that came next. Thanks to the work of researchers like Biondo, we now know that at least one T58 was fully assembled. His scans and archive, made available through his Patreon, helped bring this forgotten tank back into view. If you enjoyed this deep dive into forgotten armor history, leave a like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Which post-war tank do you think deserves the spotlight next? All sources and documents are linked in the description, including technical specs, test references, and the photo archive that made this video possible. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.